I miss all of y'all. All y'all girls standing together like that. I can't take it.
Hi, everyone. James Sandora from Kohler Company. Can we give Shane another round of applause? Because what he's doing is it's so awesome. We learned a lot from him, and I hope you guys did too, just in terms of how it is that you think about who you're talking to every day. Really, really interesting, and we're so glad that we were able to connect with him. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about how Kohler Company engages our communities in order to create content and continue conversations. Hopefully in that you learn a thing or two about what you can do with your brands, and then I'll answer any questions that you might have at the end. So first, a little bit about Kohler Company. This is like completely redundant, but we're going to do it anyway. Oh, no, they didn't do that. OK, never mind. Kohler is a 140-year-old manufacturing company, and we do the kitchen and bathroom fixtures and faucets that you guys probably all likely know very well under a number of different brands around the world. We also do power. We create engines and generators. That business is almost as large as our kitchen and bath business. And we do hospitality. We own a number of resorts and hotels around the world. Does anyone golf? A few people. So you might know Kohler's golf courses. We have 6 of the top golf courses in the world. In fact, we're hosting the Men's PGA Championship in August at one of our courses in Wisconsin. And then lastly, we do interiors, furniture, and decorative products. So a number of different brands. We're a much larger company than people tend to know us as. But all of our sort of industries are focused in and around the home. Hospitality is obviously a nice synergy to what we do inside of that home space. Our industry has been a bit slow to evolve, probably a lot slower than the industries that you work in the sense that some of the disruption that you saw to the way that you interact with your customers many years ago is only just now starting to happen inside of that interiors landscape. And it's happening really, really quickly. We have companies like Google entering the marketplace. Pinterest and houses are really starting to disrupt how people consume content. So this model, this content commerce community model that I like to use to look at the landscape has evolved in a really, really hyper-quick way. What existed in the past, where you saw sort of endemic ownership of each one of those categories, is now beginning to fragment quite a bit. So we have a lot of new entrants into the landscape. We have a lot of people trying to play across categories. That's been really interesting for us as a brand and how it is that we engage our customers, where we've had this 100-plus year ownership of the customer start to sort of fall apart in some ways, in the sense that that person's attention exists across so many different channels. And what I think is interesting about this is that as a brand, that gives you an opportunity to really engage with that person in a new way. This hyper-connected consumer, this person that's always on a device, this person that is always consuming a lot of content, has to choose to follow you as a brand. They have to say, I am going to follow Kohler, or I'm going to follow XYZ brand. And when they make that decision, they become loyal at a level that we haven't seen represented inside of the consumer landscape before. It means that they want to follow your content. They want interesting things from you, and they want to be able to have a more meaningful conversation with you. It makes their life easier when they can choose and curate their landscape and the content that they consume every day. And we take that really to heart for us. It's a meaningful relationship that we have. We know that loyalty is a lot in terms of how it is that we build long-term relationships with our customers. All of our industries evolve sort of around a long purchase process. You don't frequently make changes to the faucet that you have in your kitchen and bathroom. So we have to keep that person engaged in order to make sure that we stay top of mind over many, many years. So going back to what we're here to talk about today, the idea of being agile in social media, I think, in a lot of ways can be distracting, right? Being agile doesn't mean constantly creating content in order to have every conversation you can with every consumer that might be trying to interact with you or say anything relevant about your industry. But rather, what it means is just being able to have really meaningful conversations about the things that matter most to you as a brand. A lot of brands operate without this. They operate without a really clear knowledge of what's meaningful to them in terms of what's important in their landscape or what their brand architecture is made from. So shifting your focus from responding to everything to responding to the things that matter simply means that you are getting hyper-focused on those things that are most important to both you as a brand and you as an audience at the same time. That allows you to really curate how it is that you have conversations, how it is that you converse with your audience in that meaningful way, to respect the loyalty that they have brought back to you. So for Kohler, what that means is that, as an example, design is really important to us. Technology is really important to us, and innovation is really important to us. And we look at the landscape through those pillars. That means we have conversations about interior design, about fashion, about invention and education, and how those things are being applied to the landscape. But to do that, we have to keep a really wide audience inside of Kohler Company focused on the same types of goals we're focused on inside of this sort of marketing landscape. Otherwise, we couldn't do it in a really meaningful way. So defining who those organizational champions are is a really important part of our strategy and how we stay nimble around these topics. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly for us, we don't try and push brand messaging into every conversation that we have. We know that simply engaging with an audience around something that's really relevant to both them and to us is enough relevancy and enough to create that brand connection that we're all striving for inside of this landscape. So here's some examples of how it is that we've created things to stay relevant and to kind of keep that conversation going and interesting for our market and for our customers. We heard Shane talking about the dragon shower and the sort of split head shower. This is another example of another one of his students that created a shower that has bananas that come out of the shower head. This is our illustration of that. That obviously falls into the sort of innovation and education bucket. Now, I think that you need to differentiate between simply liking a tweet or simply retweeting something from really engaging your internal team to have a really large conversation around that content. There's easy things that you can do in order to keep the conversation going inside of social media. Liking something that someone has gone out of their way to talk to you about is simple. Building an organization that has the ability to create content like this is way more difficult, and that's why it's really important that you focus in on what's most important. Education is extremely important to Kohler Company, so we internally really loved the idea of engaging with this second grade class. Another and sort of more endemically relevant example is design, interiors, and fashion. So we maintain content in order to inspire people to aesthetically inside of their home. And to do that, we engage influencers inside and outside of our category. This is a fashion blogger that provided content and partnered with us to create a mood board that people can use in order to think about what the aesthetic is that they want inside of their bathroom in this case. So just a few quick lessons that I hope that you find relevant for the businesses that you work in. First and foremost, being agile is not a strategy, rather a strategy enables you to be agile. This is simply knowing that you're always going to create the best content and the best relationship with your customer when you're having conversations around the things that matter to you both, rather than trying to have every single conversation that your brand might find in that market. Ask your team what they have chosen to not respond to as often as you ask what they have. I think knowing how the sort of larger landscape is evolving around your brand is really important for you to understand how you can stay nimble inside of your brand architecture and continually evolve that. Remember, the idea is to sort of stay relevant and bring the conversation to your customers through the lens of what they find important. And if you see trends in that landscape, then that means you as a brand has to be nimble enough to change with those trends. Identify organizational champions and keep them updated to keep them close. So what I mean by this is those people that are engaged to keep your social media channels and your brand profile up to date and relevant and meaningful online are the same people that become your stakeholders as you as a marketing leader communicate results and talk about what's happening in that landscape. It's very easy for us as marketers to forget that the entire organization is interested in the types of things that our customers have to say about us. And this is just acknowledging the fact that you can keep people engaged and keep people wanting to help you if you keep them really, really close to your work. This is what works for Kohler Company. So we're going to continue down this path, especially inside of that design landscape, and I hope you guys find it interesting. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have on any of this.
Hi, I'm wondering how timing has come into your strategy. So, I mean, social, you know, the faucet's always on, right? Pun intended. So, when do you choose to put the glass underneath the faucet and engage with your customers? It sounds like you made the smart decision not to engage with everything, but that means you're making a decision to engage with something.
Right.
Do you have listening tools in place to do that? And are you bringing in other like experts within the company to kind of answer something specific?
Yeah, so how do we bring timing into our strategy is a really good question. We do use listening tools. We have a really large listening strategy focused on not only identifying things to interact inside of the landscape, but also trends that we want to monitor so that we as a brand can kind of just know what's happening inside of the interior landscape. We don't believe that responding in immediacy is necessary for the customers that we have inside of our landscape. Acknowledging quickly is important. The example with the shower heads from Shane earlier, I mean, the timeline essentially looked like we saw the tweets come in, we responded within a day, we took about a week to create the content, and then we brought that back into the landscape. Now, that was fine. We kept people engaged, we kept them interested in the content, and that worked for us. I think there's different types of conversations that you have inside of the social landscape where immediacy is a lot more necessary. Things like customer service-oriented inquiries. Obviously, what we talked about today doesn't necessarily apply when you have someone that has a product that you've made that doesn't work properly or has a product that is needs to be optimized in some way, shape, or form. In that case, we think about customer service as respond as quickly as you possibly can. So thinking about larger organizational strategies, I guess it varies based on the type of content that you're creating, but we don't see there being any sort of raising pressure to keep brand conversations with really quick immediacy.
Hi.
Hi.
So you have a very infrequent purchase cycle for your customers. So are you the rare brand where there's no pressure to measure results, or how do you measure them on such a long tail cycle?
That's a good question. So results for us means many different things. I think clearly we're not measuring everything we do against a dollar in any sort of really quick purchase cycle. What we do measure are things like intent to purchase at some point in the future, and satisfaction with the type of content that we create. So we drive a lot of people to an inspiration destination where they can consume all of the content that we talk about, and we measure how happy people are with consuming the content on that environment, that satisfaction is a really important measure for us. And one of the only leading indicators that we found as a brand that aligns up with purchase propensity in the future. We also measure things like likelihood to recommend and just general brand affinity measures as well. Measurement does get a bit more complicated in the sense that we don't have a hard sort of revenue metric that we're driving to from a, for example, e-commerce perspective. But what that means is that we have to sort of measure through the lens of a lot of different types of brand studies and things like that. So yes, we measure quite a bit. No, we're not exempt from it, unfortunately. We just have to get a bit more unique in how it is that we apply success to the things that we're doing. Great. Thank you so much.